Hey everyone, before we get into this week's episode of Talk of the Town, I want to talk about a big sponsor of the podcast, that being Zencastr. Zencastr is now the all-in-one solution for making podcasting easy. It's the ultimate web-based podcasting solution that I even use for Talk of the Town. It provides high-quality audio and video production and hosting, as well as a full suite of professional tools that podcasters can seamlessly use to record, produce, and publish from one all together platform. The other thing I really love is that they also have ways for podcasters to make money through its ad network, and also they recently came out with a cool feature called Zen AI, which allows their AI software to make clips for your podcast that you can put onto YouTube, TikTok, and other places. Make sure to go check them out in the show notes down below. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Talk of the Town. This is a podcast where we talk about all things media, creators, business, and more. My name is Tristan. I'm the host of the podcast. This is your first time listening to the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And if you're returning from previous episodes, thank you so much for tuning back into new episodes. Today on the podcast, we have a really special guest. I probably wouldn't do as good of an introduction for them, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Ben, go right ahead.
Thank you, Tristan. Appreciate that. Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is Ben. I lead customer success at Beacons.ai. You probably heard of us from our link in bio platform, where we're ultimately becoming the one stop shop for all content creators to run their entire business through. I've been with the company for over a year and a half now. I was one of the first couple hires and do everything from customer success to community to running our social media to a whole bunch of other things that the company needs, because we are a small person team of about 37 employees. So at a startup like ours, do a whole bunch of different activities. But that's a quick little background about me.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for agreeing to come on to the podcast. Definitely really appreciative of that. So kind of talk a little bit about your background first. Like, where did you grow up? Like, what were you into as a kid? Like, what like talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in central Pennsylvania in like a small farm town, actually. Actually went to school at Penn State, studied hospitality management. Thought I was actually going to become a chef, work in the hospitality industry, or do something in hotels, something like that. Beacons took me to like a whole different place. Actually, working at like a tech company. I graduated during like the height of COVID in May of 2020. Had to get creative with my career and figuring out what I want to do. So after was looking in hospitality and wasn't able to find something, I took to Twitter to find other opportunities and actually found the job posting from Beacons there. Interviewed with the team, absolutely loved them. Was able to get just a great opportunity with them. Shortly met the team 2 months later in Los Angeles for the first time, and then actually moved to San Francisco 2 months after that to work and start living there. And I actually just opened an office when I joined the team as well. So that was a really exciting time. Outside of Beacons and work, I love to snowboard, travel. Been to about 5 countries so far. I studied abroad in Australia and New Zealand as well for a bit in college. One of probably the best semesters. Also love going to Lake Tahoe to snowboard as well in the wintertime. So I've been doing a lot of that. So just that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a California native, one of the best places I feel like you'd love snowboarding is Big Bear Mountain, which I know is more in like the Southern California area. But tremendously, like when I went there as a kid and I loved the heck out of it. Other than the fact that I got sick and coming back down from the mountain, literally like it was me, my mom, my dad, my sister, my uncle, my aunt, and my grandparents, or my mom's parents. And literally while we were there, my uncle got sick, and then when we got back down to like California or down to LA, I was sick for like an entire week. Like literally, uh, ended up finding out like when we came back home and had a military doctor check me and my mom. I was like, "Yeah, you have walking pneumonia." And I'm like, "Great."
Jeez.
Because like in Big Bear, it's like so frigid temperatures.
Mhm.
Like it, and so Like literally when we were in like back in my grandparents' house in LA, I like physically had to be pulled out of bed for to get like food and stuff like that. Like I
Oh,
could not.
geez, man.
That was a fun time. I think I was maybe like I think I was still in middle school at that time. So uh, maybe just began like my high school years, but like yeah, that was a fun time for sure. Um, Interesting that you bring up like wanting to be in the hospitality industry. Is it something that you still would want to do? Like, let's say if you got the call tomorrow from a, a restaurant that you know of, or let's say you decide to go into a different aspect of hospitality. Like, is that something you do?
That's a tough question. I mean, I think I always love hospitality. Like, some of the greatest coworkers I've ever had and connections and friends I've made have been in hospitality. I've been fortunate enough to have some really awesome experiences in the industry. I got to work as a pastry chef at the Jersey Shore. I got to work in Las Vegas for MGM. I got to work at an amusement park in Pennsylvania. So I definitely love the industry and think it's a lot of fun and would certainly consider going back because I think, I do have a lot of knowledge and experience there. I will say it would definitely have to be like the right opportunity, or would probably want not to be in like hospitality operations, but more so probably on like the tech side of like building some software or something like that. But hard to say. Definitely love the industry and could see myself back there one day. But I'm really happy with Beacons and the company I'm at now and all the experiences I get to have there. I will say I do feel like I still get to do a lot of hospitality related work, whether that's planning in-person events or like virtual events, dinners and things like that for creators in my team, or getting to travel with them, things like that. So maybe one day, but certainly very happy where I'm at right now.
Who knows? If Beacon does like a creator cookout at VidCon, they'll just hire you.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I think also as well as I've seen, with like the rise of like Ghost Kitchen, especially with like Mr. Beast Burger,
Yeah.
or Dough Bricks or Chamberlain Coffee. I think there's a really interesting mix there of actually hospitality and creators, of like what can be done there. For example, I think it's really compelling. A lot of creators or influencers will sell merch. But like, someone can only buy so many t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, stickers, etc, because it's kind of like one and done. Like, that's limited. But the amount of times I can go eat a Mr. Beast burger is unlimited because if I want to have a cheeseburger every day, I can. Things like that, or I drink coffee every day, Chamberlain's coffee. So I think there's a lot of like opportunity, and that's like a really interesting space where creators could explore about selling food and beverage as a way to expand their revenue.
Yeah, I mean, certainly seeing like I remember when Mr. Beast Burger like started and just seeing like how expansive that was from the offset, because like you did expect like okay they do like a small like test rollout. It was like no, we're doing this nationwide from day one. I remember there were places like here in Lincoln and places in Omaha that were doing it, and I was just like excuse me, like how is this possible? Obviously looking at like the FaZe Clan guys, I believe they did something similar with like sandwiches and stuff. Dobrik's obviously, which is like a really great, interesting concept. I think that there's a lot of these creator focused and creator founded companies
Hmm.
that are really like taking the different areas of culture and really flipping them on their head. Like a good example I bring up with a lot of people is especially like the venture capital space. You now see like everyday influencers taking their net worth and their audience and now creating venture capital funds, like Charlie D'Amelio, Nate O'Brien, um,
Hmm.
tons of other creators out there. So like I mean there's always something I feel like that's being disrupted in traditional like business
Hmm.
by creators, and it's always kind of just been interesting, again, as someone who's been in the space for 11 years now, which is still crazy to say out loud. Like
Hmm.
I don't think a lot of people could have predicted where things would be.
Yeah. I think creators are always kind of pushing the envelope and kind of really adapting to things and making it their own. I think the D'Amelios had like their own TV show on Hulu, which I think was like a huge crossover of like this kind of more older traditional type media of like a television show, and like now it's like influencers are getting TV show deals and things like that, or like the Kardashians kind of started on traditional TV, and then they were able to take that fame and bring it over to social media. And I think now Kim Kardashian for like a sponsored Instagram post doesn't charge anything less than like $1 million. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting to see that too.
Well, a fun fact actually that a lot of people don't realize about the Charlie D'Amelio and Hulu show is that like when I heard about that at first, it wasn't out of the realm of possibility, because if you actually look into like who's running the D'Amelio empire, and it's kind of a funny like node to the creator space, is the guy who runs the D'Amelio family enterprise is a guy by the name of Greg Goodfried, and he's actually the guy who created Lonely Girl 15 on YouTube way back in like 2006.
Mhm.
Which is that web show where basically they had this like actress from New Zealand play a 16-year-old girl, and basically did like a whole scripted out web show on the internet. So like um, I believe he was working at like UTA when the D'Amelio family got signed, and then eventually they're like, "Hey, come over to us." And so, long story short, like when I heard about that Hulu deal, I was like, "Yeah, that's not surprising." I was like, that either one, you would have had to deal with like YouTube, or you would have probably had to deal with Hulu, because those are probably the only really big places you could. So yeah, I mean, certainly really interesting to see like where things are headed as of right now. One of the interesting things that's kind of happening right now in the creator space, and I don't know if you saw it the other day, but that being Susan Wojcicki stepping down from YouTube. And I wanted to get your thoughts about that, because I feel, first off, was not on our bingo cards for this year,
Yeah.
but it also there's always sort of been this love hate relationship with YouTube and its leadership and certain things. But like, where do you think YouTube will go now as a platform?
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting question, and honestly, I don't know. I think my guess is as good as anyone else's out there. I think just from talking to so many creators, I think everyone kind of views YouTube as like the ultimate like pie in the sky for monetization because they do pay the most. It is a way where you can kind of make a really sustainable career as a content creator because you can make a great deal of money from YouTube AdSense and long form content is kind of the holy grail. It is also the most difficult, to gain a following on YouTube. But, if you have, a couple 100,000 followers on YouTube, you're able to make a pretty penny and sustain yourself and have a full time career out of it. Now, as far as Susan stepping down, I think that'll be really interesting to kind of see, how that, changes and what will change if, YouTube becomes like, more friendly to creators, less friendly, etc. I think she's certainly been, probably like the CEO of one of the most powerful social media platforms, especially during the last, 10, 11 years. I think you said it was, or how long she's been tenured there. So she's definitely been seeing over a ton of changes, both on that platform as well as, just within the creator space as well. So she certainly had a big influence there. So I think it'll be interesting to see where YouTube goes from here. I certainly think, YouTube still feels a lot of pressure now from TikTok and other the social media platforms to keep creators on there because all these platforms are vying to get the top talent on there so people come to their sites. You're seeing YouTube having their creator fund. For a while they were paying out a ton for their shorts product and getting people on their short form content away from Meta and TikTok. So I think it'll be really interesting to see if they continue to still be aggressive and compete with these other platforms, or if they kind of hang back and rest on their heels of knowing that they're YouTube and they'll always kind of be that like golden, I guess, place where people want to get to.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm interested in seeing what happens with YouTube is I know it just came out with shorts monetization, which is a really good thing, but they're also like slowly working on this YouTube fan partner or like YouTube fan program, I think it is, which is basically like if you're not qualified enough to be in the YouTube partner program, like here's at least similar things that we give as part of it to creators, which I feel like is great. At least it's like obviously YouTube ad revenue is king, but like if you're still able as a channel that isn't part of the program to get um memberships or live chats or things like that, then I feel like it at least makes up for the fact that we have most creators haven't had access to YouTube monetization in like 4 years because of the
Mhm.
partner program change way back in the day. Um, the one thing that always I guess sort of bugs me when talking about social media platforms, especially in the short form space, is how the heck is Snapchat still alive? Because like I made a comment to somebody the other day where like Snapchat, it has the most replicated business model of all time, right? You look at like TikTok, which has like TikTok now. You look at Instagram, which has Instagram stories. You look at Twitter, which for some point in time had Twitter stories. Um,
Mhm.
YouTube. I don't ever think that they're gonna do that. I feel like that'd be a little bit like I feel like the community tab made sense, just not like a stories thing. Um,
Mhm.
but like, what is your take on that? Like, why do you think it is that Snapchat still exists?
Yeah, I think, I was like, in high school when Snapchat came out. So I think that was like, I don't know, 2012-ish or something like that, whenever it came out. So I was like, in that first cohort of users of like, okay, I was like young at the time and saw it. And I still use Snapchat today. I'm 25 years old. I check it multiple times a day. I still have, streaks with friends and things like that. So I think, for me, I'm not too surprised by the success of Snapchat, honestly, because it is something that's so ingrained in my daily life. Like I probably use Snapchat. It's probably like the second or third most used app on my phone after like texting and Twitter or Instagram, things like that. So I think it's still, people are constantly using it every single day. So if you get those daily active user numbers high, like people are going to convert onto those other products and see other things. I think also as well, a lot of I think it does so well. It's because it's kind of like it's not really like a top tier social media platform when people think about it. They think of like YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and like TikTok as the big four. And then I think there's kind of like these two dark horses, which is like Pinterest and uh, I'm sorry, Snapchat, who still get like a ton of users every day. Like there's still millions of people who are on both of these platforms that are checking them every day and like just are super engaged and love them. Like I still post Snapchat stories daily for my friends, things like that. So I think they're just kind of it's I think it's kind of like Twitter too. You either like are really invested in it and like you get it and like you tweet every day, or you're just kind of like, oh, that's not for me. Like I'm not on there. My friends aren't on there. So like, why the heck would I ever use those platforms? So that's kind of how I view those two. It's like if you're on them, you kind of get it and you understand the hype around it. Now, if you're not on it, like you just kind of like don't get it. Like I myself, I don't use Pinterest. I never have. I don't think I've ever even made a pin board. So, I don't get it, but I know that people can have some really great audiences and can do some great monetization there. I will say though, on Snapchat, I've never looked at like the paid featured stories. I don't even know what they're called. I know there's tons of like ads and shows and stuff on there. I
Yeah,
don't personally like click on them. I don't think they like really appeal to me. Like I see them, they kind of look more childish and like target at like teenagers. So I don't check those out, but I know certainly a lot of companies put money, and I've heard some creators have been able to make some good money from
yeah,
those views and ads there.
yeah. I read something the other day where I know people like David Dobrik make like a load of money off advertising through Snapchat, which is just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Not unreasonable to say the least, because like um again, once you're at that level of audience and able to monetize on Snapchat, then like it makes so much sense. Yeah, again, like I eventually feel like one of these days Snapchat is just going to get bought out by like one of the bigger four and be like, well, goodbye. I mean, who knows? Elon could buy Snapchat for all we know. I don't think that that'd be an unreasonable thing. Another thing with social media platforms going on, and this just kind of came out within like the last day or two, is the announcement that like um, Meta is going to be rolling out like verified for Instagram people.
Mm-hmm.
Which like is something that again, like with Twitter, we all chased that verification badge for so very long. Like we, always held it on a pedestal,
Mm-hmm.
and now like when people got it, like people flocked to buying it.
Mhm.
First off, like, what's your take on Meta doing this, where allowing Facebook and Instagram verification badges for as a subscription, and then like, what do you think that does to the platform?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting take. I think, Twitter was the first one to really kind of sell, like, pay us a subscription, we'll get you that check mark. So I think it really takes away from it now, honestly. Like, now if anyone can just pay, what is it, $8 or $11 a month for it,
Yeah,
I think it, like, takes away the specialty of it. Like, oh, I'm verified on Twitter, but now, like, you can just pay for that. So I think it loses, like, it was held in high regard because it was really hard to get. Like, if you got verified on Twitter, like, that meant like you were somebody, or you knew somebody, or like you were important. But now it's kind of like, oh, anyone can just buy it.
or and sorry to cut you off there, or you paid somebody to get
Yeah,
it.
exactly. So I think it kind of just takes away from that, like, from there. But I think, from a business perspective, like, hey, if you can charge for it and people will pay for it, like, Meta and Twitter are both, Twitter used to be public, but Meta is a publicly traded company, and ultimately at the end of the day, they need to make money for their shareholders.
Yeah,
So, if they can charge whatever it is, $10+ a month, so someone can get a blue check mark next to their name and people pay for it, from a business perspective, I think, maybe that's short sighted. Like, yeah, maybe they'll get a nice boost in revenue for this quarter, but 4 quarters from now, when, maybe their revenue is lagging because, people have stopped, people stop subscribing to it, or, less people are using the platform because there's more verified people, and, it's full of junk. Who knows?
yeah,
I don't know what's going to play out there. I think, Twitter is still continuing to see like all-time record highs of, people on the platform. Maybe that'll happen to Facebook. Who knows? But yeah, I don't know what the long-term effect of that's going to be. Besides, they'll definitely probably get some revenue boost now, and I think also as well, if nothing else, like, we're talking about it, so it's doing something. If we're bringing it up in conversation, talking about it in this podcast, I know there were numerous news outlets reporting about it too. So I think it'll be interesting to see, and I hope, maybe if they do this, it'll make, the platform safer, and there'll be less fake accounts, and maybe it'll help with that. So I think from that perspective, if it can, get rid of, spam accounts, bot accounts, trolls,
yeah.
etc., I think that'll definitely be a win, for the platform.
Yeah, I mean, it'll certainly be interesting to see how they do it. Do they bundle a bunch of features with
Mhm.
it? Like how Twitter did, or is it just, hey, you pay, whatever the amount of money I think Zuckerberg said it is, and then you just get a verified badge. Like, because I feel like with Twitter, it's like at least like, hey, there's some features that are great having, like for instance, being able to have two-factor authentication now. Like you, that's the only way to have it on Twitter, which is I think a godsend. But also like being able to like uh send tweets out but still have time to like undo them. I think at
Mhm.
the same time, like, that's something that's great. There's a couple of different things I've noticed too. I definitely want to see like how Twitter goes with like the content creation revenue model, because like that's something that Elon's talked a lot about. I feel like there's a lot of different ways you can do it, where it's either paying per view on a tweet, or something of that nature. um
Mhm.
I fear though, if like, it'd have to be minuscule, like probably as much as TikTok is paying creators, because
Mhm.
otherwise TikTok or Twitter would probably go bankrupt over that. Now that I think about it, um, so certainly a really interesting time to see what's happening with social media platforms. I mean, if YouTube told me tomorrow in an email, hey, for $100 a month, we'll let you into the YouTube Partner Program, I'm not gonna lie, I'd do it. Probably wouldn't make that money back, but I'd do it. You know,
Mhm.
so like, certainly really interesting. Now, as far as it goes with Beacons, right? Talk about some of the things you guys are doing at Beacons, right? Because, I've always been a big fan of what you guys have been doing, and how
Mhm.
you kind of differentiate yourselves from other link in bios out there. Like
Mhm.
Linktree is there, but it's basic at best, or
Mhm.
really now it's like catching up to others, because it's like they just stayed link in bio for so long that they didn't have these integrations. Whereas like
Mhm.
you guys have from the offset tried to be like the all in one.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think Beacons we're in a really exciting time right now. I think we're most well known for our link in bio. The team has been working on that since 2019, so we were early to that. Now we're aware of about 60 plus competitors who are just building link in bio. So I think today, that's what we're known for. But Beacons, we really want to be the one stop shop for creators to run their entire business through. So not only just have you can have your link in bio, you can have your media kit to help you out to get brand sponsorships. You can do invoicing to get those brand deals. You can do like we have a link shortener now. We're coming out with a QR code generator. We have an email marketing tool that our team has just recently released as well. So we have actually have an app store, about 14 different apps right now today that our team just was able to roll out in the last 3 months. So we've been building a lot, really expanding it. So we're not just link in bio. We really are the place where any creator can come and build their entire business through Beacons, whether that be, they want to sell courses or they want to do affiliate marketing or they want to just drive more views to the other social media platforms. That can all be done directly on Beacons. So we've really been pushing hard on that and want to make it so creators can, really come to one place and have everything they need to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think Beacons is probably like I think the only link in bio service out there that probably has you guys beat, and it's just from a standpoint of like anything that you could think being integrated onto their service is there is Koji. Like I joked to someone who was trying to build a link in bio. I was like, dude, when there's people like Beacons and Koji that I mean, like, if you go look at Koji, like they've literally got everything you could think of where it's like locked video, locked audio, you know, fan this and fan that, and like literally, like some of the gag ones that they do, like just like image generator or NFT creator or like just and so many other integrations. I think is like kind of crazy. Um, so like getting back to where I was trying to head with this, like, do you think that there's still room for beacons to expand to continue like evolving as a product?
Yeah. I think, I think, one of the hard things for us right now is figuring out like, okay, we have so many ideas of things we want to talk about and do. Like, I can tell you, we also have, we started to use Chat GPT-3 and
Yep.
we've built out a tool for creators to help with their brand outreach because we know that's really tough. So, you can put in a brand you want and we automatically pull in all of your social media stats and analytics. So you can create a great pitch email and talk to these brands that way and hopefully help you secure more brand deals. So, we think there's so much green space in the creator world. I think there's also so many areas we haven't even touched upon yet. I think for us, it's figuring out, what are those most important next steps? Like should we get more into fintech and provide banking and investing services, things like that? Should we go down more of like the audience building route where like we continue to build out like email and marketing tools and do SMS and things like that. So I think there's tons of space for beacons to play in still. I think there's so many other companies who are building these point solutions for it just in the creator space. But at Beacons, we again want to be that one-stop shop for creators. So I think for us, it's figuring out, within our umbrella and suite of products, what's that next, marquee feature that we want to build out for our creators, so they can add that to their app store and continue to use Beacons for everything. So I certainly think there's tons of space left, and we're still, very early on in figuring out, what are those other products and features we want to continue to build out.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there, I love like the AI outreach tool you guys have. Like, I tested it the other day because like I notoriously suck at getting like brand deals or reaching out to people. Where I'm just like, I would prefer you to reach out to me, but then I'm like, yeah, that's not the way the world works.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that's really been a great tool. Seeing some of the other stuff that you guys have, like I mean, like for instance, and I don't know that a lot of other platforms do this, where you guys have it where you can through the $10 a month plan get a custom domain,
Mm-hmm.
set up an email, do all the email marketing and social media stuff, like SMS and everything through beacons, which I think is really great. It'd be really awesome to have like an separate from like the email um, stuff that you have right now with like an actual inbox, something that's kind of in line with how like Google does like Google domains, and then
Hmm.
Google email on top of that. Um, it's certainly, I think, like one of the more outrageous ideas, and this is something that popped in my head while you were talking, is like, it'd be really cool to monetize beacons profiles when they're clicked on, right? So like even like if somebody doesn't go to an external link, just like, like let's say, I don't know. I mean, you could think of any sort of number per view,
Hmm.
but like just going and clicking on somebody's page, like knowing like, hey, you're going to get money at the end of the day for someone clicking on your link, because like
Hmm.
there's so many creators out there who are incentivizing people to go to the link in bios and follow them, or go to the link in bio to buy digital items or things like that. I feel like that'd just be a really great way to sort of like throw link in bios on their head, is like, hey, we'll monetize the views on your link in bio.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's definitely something people have shared with us. Yeah, kind of being just allowing them to sell like digital ads directly on like their beacons pages. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I feel like that'd be great. To do something like that, like a did like a billboard space or something. Um, especially because like you can pay a creator who you do or don't have a brand deal with already, to basically be like, well, hey, just buy space on my beacons. There you go. Um, so I think that'll be very interesting to see like how that would play out. Um, it's certainly a very interesting time for you guys. And again, I think like you guys are really doing like tremendous. Um, on top of that, like one of the things I really found interesting about beacons, and I still continuously kick myself and like every day about this mentally, is that you guys are one of the only creator companies out there that actually did a crowdfund raise, which I think is tremendous, right? Because you look at all these other ones out there, like Linktree, Koji, X, Y, and Z out there, that will just do a traditional venture raise. Um, but like you guys, from the offset, decided to do that even before getting like Andressen and Y Com. Well, I think after you guys got Y Combinator in the mix. But like, what's your take on that? And then also, do you think that there's inevitably room again for another like crowdfund like that, where again, like you see so many companies raising, and like the growth that Beacons has had? Do you think that there's an opportunity to especially in 2023, launch a crowdfund and then say we're not only a creator focused but also a creator owned company?
Yeah, yeah. I think the crowdfunding round happened, before I was at the company. I know I'm not sure exactly what the numbers were from that, but yeah, I know a lot of creators joined in that, as well as, Beacons has a lot of creator investors as well. We view them as really strategic and useful to the company, as they understand the business better than anyone. So they've been really helpful as well. As far as like future fundraising, I don't know what that could look like for the company. I think we always want to, put ourselves up for success. So I think, if we think there's a strong enough opportunity there or something like that, that could be something down the line in the future. But, ultimately, I'm not the one who gets to make that decision. But
Yeah.
I think, we want to make sure we set ourselves up for long-term success at the company. And so that could potentially happen down the road. But, you never know.
Yeah, I just went and looked, and I believe it was only like $200,000 at the time. I mean, that was March of 2021. While at least people knew about beacons, but not like as tremendously growth as it's been like today. Um, so like certainly, I mean, like I'm sure, I know I've floated the idea to Neil at least once or twice when like talking to him on Twitter or in emails, like, hey, if you guys ever did this, like, I will be the first one to jump in. I think Republic, which is where they held it. Like, I know they're coming out with a secondary investing market. So I've also joked like, hey, I might buy someone else's shares, uh, or however that works out. Who knows? I think it'll be really interesting because again, like like how we started off this episode talking about creators who are taking their their influence, or taking their um, their stature, and being able to invest in the companies, or really back companies, and sort of see like this rise of things happening. So that's kind of why I floated the question to you, at least. So this is the point of the podcast where I like to turn the tables over, let you become the host of the podcast, bring up questions or topics that you want to talk about. So Ben, the floor is yours.
Yeah, yeah. While we're talking about investing, Tristan, I'd love to hear, what are some, deals you've seen recently or companies that you've invested in recently that, have you excited, specifically in the creator space? Because, I think at Beacons, we're always just trying to look around and make sure we're aware of, like, what else is coming up, what potential competitors are around, what new interesting ideas are coming into the space. Because I always want to be able to, make sure we're on top of things and best serve our users. So we'd love to kind of see what you're seeing from your perspective.
Yeah, it's really tough. There's a lot of creator companies that kind of skirt going the crowdfunding model. Or like, again, like, crowdfunding has only been around for, I want to say, like, sometime this year it'll be 7 years, and so, like, really, like, I think Beacons is the only big one that comes to mind. I think the only other ones in that is like Cure Story, which is more like with athletes and stuff. I think there's some like fledgling social media apps out there that are doing it as well, and sort of trying to create their version of a social media platform mixed with creator economy aspects. Um, I know, for instance, one of the big ones that's on my radar right now is actually Zencaster, which, no plug intended, is where we're recording the podcast. I think like they've currently raised, like, I think $500,000 or something like that right now on WeFunder. Outside of like the crowdfunding model, I mean, there's always companies I see that are trying to get into the creator space. Like, a lot of them have been on the sort of investing in the creators, like, stocks and stuff. I see a lot of them where, um, most recently, like, I talked with the guys from Fourth Wall, and they're amazing. If I had a couple $1,000,000 lying around, I'd probably go invest into them for sure. Um, but I think, like, on top of that, the thing about the creator space is that there's just so much room for disruption and creation. Like, it doesn't matter what's happening. Like, there could be 20 entrants into a space already, and then someone new could come in and somehow find like a way to make things work. So, like, um, I feel like it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Out of my personal wheelhouse, I mean, like, I've done a little over 30 investments. Mostly on the like fintech side of things, and seeing like that doing well. A lot of like interesting ones is actually more like focusing on consumer companies than like actually like backing other companies. So, like, that's something I find that's always been sort of like really interesting, at least, is seeing that happen, where it's like, I've invested into banking companies, into some crypto companies. Well, not, I want to be very clear, more Web3 than actual crypto. um but like, I think it'll be very interesting. I think the three wild ones I did last year was investing into a transatlantic airline.
Okay.
That'll probably be the craziest one I'll ever do. um and then I think from there, the other two that really like stick out in my head were NYCE, which is like a building like real estate of a Robinhood of real estate, allowing people to like invest into real estate with like $1. Plus, they have like, like a wealth building academy, a social media component to it as well, memberships, like all sorts of different things. So I feel like that is one that I'm always like appreciative of. Um, I'm trying to think if there's any other interesting ones that, I mean, every startup I've invested into is interesting in their own way. So I want to make that clear. Like, any of the companies I've listened to, or I'm invested to, or listening to this, I'm not hating on you. Like, um, I think the only other one that's really like interesting. and it's actually one that I wanted to do last summer and couldn't do, and then and got the ability to do earlier this year, was a company out of Culver City, California, where I'm originally from, called Assure Printed Homes, and they're basically doing like 3D printed houses and backyard studios and stuff like that. Um, using like recycled materials. So like I thought that was a really great one because it was like, hey, that's actually a company based in my backyard. Like, I looked up their location, and it was like 10 minutes from where my like mom and my uncle grew up. So I was like, that's kind of cool. Um, but yeah, I think those are the main ones. I'd love to get into some creator companies, but
Mhm.
there's sort of this problem where, again, like how the government has it, if you don't have enough money, then you don't get fancy accredited status.
Mhm.
I think there's some other ways of getting it too, but like, hopefully, again, like there's some creator companies that go out there and start crowdfunding, or, even if it's just like general media, I feel like would be great.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I guess another question I have for you is, what do you think about, 2023 so far? What do you think, from the creator space? What kind of things are you looking out for this year? Do you think there's going to be any big shakeups? I know last year kind of felt like NFTs were kind of like the big thing and the metaverse, but now I feel like I don't hear anyone talking about that anymore, especially with like the price of Bitcoin going down and
Yeah.
things like that. So what do you think is kind of, what are you seeing, or what do you think is going to be big in 2023?
I think so. There's two parts of that question I want to answer. The part about like why you don't hear as much about NFTs and the metaverse and things like that is because a lot of people really got sucked into it, myself included. And then, by the summer of last year, a lot of us kind of looked at ourselves and were like, we just wasted all this money, right? Like, I sunk money into a metaverse project, as a customer that by like the summer, and I started in like January. By the time it was May, I was looking back at myself and I'm like, Tristan, you just spent way too much money and you're screwed. Like, because especially in May, that's when the whole like Terra Luna thing happened. I think as well, like NFTs, the reason why a lot of people stopped, the whole promise of NFTs is for two reasons. One, people started scamming, or like the things being offered in those NFTs were just unrealistic at best, right? I mean, if you want a good example of where NFTs were used as such a grifter method, go look at what Ty Lopez did. Um, but like, I feel like there's elements though that NFTs brought, like the sort of, I think like the components of it are great. Whereas like just like the NFT side of things is more like iffy, right? Like, because I told someone the other day, you can look at a lot of the things that like an NFT would offer, in the creator space, and it's very similar to like a Patreon subscription at this point. So I feel like a lot of people just kind of jumped on the bandwagon too quick, without thinking of it. And then to answer the second question, I feel like what we're going to see, in the creator space is a lot more, um, diversification of content. We're going to be seeing more output. A lot of people are so really focused on algorithm, and like chasing views, and I'm certainly guilty of that myself. But like I look at it and I think like, you know where we as a society have gone because of this social media craze, and how, like, yeah, how good of a, individual you are based off your views, your subscribers, your followers. I feel like that's hopefully going to implode a little bit this year, and we'll see maybe people, kind of look back more at like, hey, am I actually providing good content, good value, versus like chasing the subscriber or this goal of getting partnered and monetized, and then like brand deals and everything flowing in, and then again, TikTok incentivized the heck out of people to be like, huh, if you don't post 4 or 5 times a day on TikTok, you're not going to grow. Whereas like now, hopefully we'll see like a little bit of a difference with that. I think other than that, I feel like there needs to be more going to creators these days. Like, yeah, and what I mean is like tools and um, resources and like actual opportunities for not just your bigger creators but your smaller creators, right? Um, I feel like there's a lot of smaller creators who, like let's just I'll throw out a couple examples in like the couple thousand, 10,000, and even somewhat the 100,000 range that put out a lot better content in the same niches as like a Ninja or a Charlie D'Amelio or some of your vlog based channels or whatever the case may be. But because they don't have that same audience, like they don't get those opportunities. So I feel like it'd be nice to finally balance the scales out a little bit, find ways where brands can say, okay, yeah, your content quality is on par with or better than some of these others while not necessarily having the same monetization. We can work with you long term or, sort of do deal here, deal there type of thing. So that's where I see things. I mean, otherwise, I see a lot of creators creating their own businesses and driving the traditional players in the space. Whether it's on the creator monetization aspect, whether it's on um, the brand deal side of things, whether it's I mean, like you see creators now launching their own talent agencies to avoid getting sucked in by like a UTA or an Endeavor or a CAA. So like I feel like there's that component as well. Um, it'll be interesting to see. Like I try not to predict as much because I genuinely know like I can be wrong, and um, like it's just better to kind of be like, oh, that's really cool that that happened versus like, I I probably thought that could have happened.
Gotcha. I see. Yeah. All interesting for sure.
Absolutely. Any other questions or topics you want to bring up or?
Yeah, I guess my final question for you is, what type of what creators are you watching? Like who's got your attention right now? Who's entertaining you? Who's some of your favorites like to watch?
I mean, that's a good question. There's really like a couple of categories of content I watch per day. So when it comes to news content, I exclusively watch Philip DeFranco. As someone who's sort of like, uh, I feel like one as someone who's been on the platform as long as he has, he's like even through all the YouTube ad apocalypses, the crazy things going on with YouTube and the outrages at times. Like even with his own personal things on the platform, it's like he continuously stays there putting out content. Is a really great like person and love the content he puts out. Um, when it comes to the creator space, there's a few different creators that I watch from sorts of different more on the like um the startup side of things or the brand side. So like I used to watch a lot of Gary Vee before the whole like garage sale and Web3 era that he did. I watch a lot from time to time. I watch a lot of Jade Darmawanza because she's someone who I genuinely appreciate like her takes as a Gen Z individual like in the brand space. I'm trying to think there certainly some others out there like Kat Liente who's more of a TikToker and Twitch streamer, but she gives like a lot of free stream and creator advice. I know she uses Beacons as well, so like that's like those are typically people I watch. On the gaming side of things, you know, there's always a lot of channels that I'm watching, but the thing I tell people is I will more I more do recon on the gaming channels in the Call of Duty space where I primarily make content than I actually do watching them. So like a lot of time it's like looking at like, this type of video did really well for you compared to like this one with a different item or different weapon in the game. So then I'll go and make a video on that because then, it's sort of like, okay, I'm competing against you, hopefully. And I know I won't get the same amount of views, but it's like, can I still make the same type of content, So like there's that aspect. Um, I mean, there's a lot of people I watch in the podcast space, which is kind of interesting. Like I watch Creator Economics with Reed, and Blake. Reed being the creator or not creator, but manager of Mr. Beast and Night Media. Um, Lex Friedman is someone who I've been watching a lot of recently, which I think is great. Um, I occasionally have to go back like every week or so and hope for a CoffeeZilla video. Um, I'm trying to think if there's anyone else that I watch on the internet. You know, I, I'm sure that there's a few others that I watch. A lot of the times, actually, what's interesting is I spend a lot of my time on YouTube these days watching or listening to ASMR content, which is like really helped me out. Like, because I'm typically self isolated in my setup and barely go outside my house because again talked about I live in Nebraska, which kind of sucks. But like as someone who also like deals with like a lot of mental health struggles, a lot of like sleep issues, like that honestly has probably stopped me from like having gray hairs or going insane, because um, it generally, I mean, I use it for all sorts of different methods and stuff. There are some people though also in the finance space who I've been watching a lot of. So your Nate O'Brien's, your Ask Sebby's, Graham Stephan as well. For anyone that's probably going to ask, no, I don't listen to Meet Kevin. I never will. Um, but those are like I typically try to flock towards like the creators who at least like have a wealth of knowledge or they are very good at what they do. And as someone who's trying to continuously hone my craft and my skills and in a variety of different ways, just not on the content front, that's kind of where I tend to go.
Yeah, that's quite like a spread and different mix of people you have there. That's pretty awesome to hear.
I
I've
try
heard
to
a
make
couple
it
of them.
sort of like I try to make like sort of on a weekly basis like a content day where it's like, okay, I'll go watch gaming, I'll go do this, I'll go do that, and from there like hopefully that sort of works out, um but like yeah, that's kind of where I found my like balance is like is doing that, and typically it works out a lot. I will say also, and I think that this is sort of like um um not one dimensional, but I think it's also kind of like um interesting is that I do listen to my podcast though a lot. um trying I'm sort of like a okay with like quality, but then also like how can I perfect it from there? Like it's like okay, I have one episode where I'm like, okay, that was great. How can I do better? How can I do better? You really get stuck into that cycle where like and even like being self-aware right now that like hey, there's not much you can do with like a audio or visual podcast if you don't have like Joe Rogan or again like Lex Friedman money, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome to hear though that you're like reviewing your work and like trying to improve and get better at it. I know podcasting I think is like a space that's definitely tricky, but I think the stat is like 90% of podcasts never make it past like 20 episodes or something like that. So
Yeah, so, I
I think if
mean,
you make it past that, like you're already doing better than like majority of people out there. So
the joke with
definitely,
my previous podcast, and sorry for cutting you off there, is
I'm
we
good.
did around like 20 or so episodes, and then we had a bunch that were literally during the pandemic meant to record or meant to edit and upload, and they never got uploaded. Um,
Mhm.
so the joke when I started this podcast was sort of that like, hey, those episodes are kind of treated as like the Walt Disney Vault, and I'll bring some of those out eventually over time and be like, this is a conversation I had a very long time ago with this individual. Probably half of what we talked about in this is no longer timely relevant. But I feel like that'd be really interesting to kind of do that. Because I like there are some of those conversations that I had where I'm like, man, that was such a really great conversation, and I feel like if I reach out to you now, like years later, probably either one isn't going to happen, or it's like I haven't created enough value for you in that time
Hmm.
span to where it justifies it. But yeah, I think it's also the California in me who's like, ooh, our own Walt Disney vault of content. You know, there's some episodes too that, and I've talked about this internally with like a few people, where it's like it'd be really interesting to bring over some of the content that I did from the previous podcast
Hmm.
over to Talk of the Town, you know, revamp it with the intro and reintroduce it as sort of like, hey, this isn't new content, but this is
Hmm.
content that I still did a while back that, um, you know, in the context of like this new podcast would probably suit a lot better than what it did with my old one. Um, Not that I'm trying to recycle content, just like there's always times where I'm like, oh, this person had a really great take on this. This person had a really good take on this. And I feel like it sort of helps out a lot more. Again,
Hmm.
I'm exploring a variety of different things, but right now I've got enough guests to last like a couple months worth of podcast episodes, so I'll be good, hopefully. I think one of the nice things about this podcast too that I learned from my previous one, and this is something I learned like in the transition time, was that with a lot of podcasts, it's heavily intensified on having guests, and
Hmm.
one of the things I learned from like listening to podcasts like Puck from Matt Maloney and some of the ones from like the Hollywood Reporter and Variety is like
Hmm.
you don't have to bring on a guest all the time. Like you can just sit there and talk about news or like different perspectives or like talking about different things that people want you to talk about. So
Hmm.
that's sort of like the balance is where it's like if I want to just create like 3 episodes a week where I'm just talking about news with business and creators or the entertainment
Hmm.
industry and not having to like be intensive on like having guests, I don't
Hmm.
have to worry about that. And I think it also makes
Yeah.
it a lot easier with the stress of like the rejection of like, hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast. Sorry, no. Hey, I'm kind of busy until like 6 months down the road. And it's like, you know, it at least gives me that leeway to be like, hey, I have content here. That's great.
Mhm. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Well, Tristan, I actually have to run to another meeting now. But thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope this is. So yeah, hope it's great talking to you, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Before we end off the podcast, I want to ask just one or two final questions. So for you, and you know, what are you most excited for 2023? Do you see Beacons going to places like VidCon, TwitchCon? Like what does the future look like for you guys?
Yeah, yeah. I think this year is going to be really exciting now that we have our entire app store built out with about 15 apps. I think big thing for this year is figuring out how do we show people that we're not just link in bio, but you can do your entire creator business through us. As far as like events and things like that, we're definitely looking into things like TwitchCon and VidCon to attend because we definitely want to get out there more and meet our creators face to face. We love interacting with them and building those connections with them, and we think those are great events to attend and be at. So definitely, yeah, be looking for us at those events in the upcoming year.
Absolutely. And I guess the final thing from there is, um, you know, I mean, if you want to plug any social media that you have, go right ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'm most active on Twitter, so anyone can find me at Ben Woytowich. So that's BenWoytowich on Twitter. Most active there. You can find my contact information. You can send me a DM or click the Beacons link in my bio just to kind of see everywhere else I'm at. But yeah, that'd probably be like the one place I'd plug.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, besides beacons, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, Beacons.ai on all social media everywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, Ben, really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to be on the podcast. Really means a lot. Certainly, again, as someone who's used beacons for months and months and months and months, really will love to see what happens and hopefully continued success from there.
Yeah, thank you, Tristan. Appreciate it as always, and yeah, looking for big things in the future.
Absolutely. And for those that are listening this far into the podcast, thank you so much for listening to the end of the podcast. Really means a lot to myself and everyone working on the podcast. If you want to follow the podcast on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, Talk of Town Pod. Sorry. We also have a merch store set up on Fourth Wall, which is really amazing. We're going to be doing some drops here throughout 2023. Primarily, I think some spring, summer, and fall collections. And from there, Ben, hopefully we get to meet each other in person at an event or something like that.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Tristan. Have a good one.